Michael Young, the great social entrepreneur who founded the Open University, the Consumer Council, the School of Social Entrepreneurs, amongst many other initiatives in the 20th century, talked once about the first half of the 20th century being characterised as the era of mass production, and the second half of the 20th century being characterised as the era of mass consumption. I think there's every chance that when historians and social scientists come to reflect on the first half of the 21st century, they will see that as the era of co-production. And what I mean by that, and what people are talking about in terms of co-production, is precisely this notion of people wanting to come together to help to shape their lives more than perhaps they have done in the past. We can see this move towards co-production in so many different ways, from the development of patient participation schemes, where patients are going in to help to shape the way in which medical services are provided, from the growth of citizen journalism. And the thing that really brought home to me what we're talking about here is the Time magazine of the year, Person of the Year in 2006. It wasn't one of the usual suspects. It wasn't Bush, it wasn't Blair, it wasn't Cameron, it wasn't Mandela, it wasn't even, if you can believe it, either of the two Beckhams. But what it was a mirror on the front page of the Time magazine reflecting back that their Person of the Year was us, all of us, for the changes that we are now playing in terms of the way in which people live their lives. This is a direct quote from Time magazine. The great man theory of history is usually attributed to the Scottish philosopher Thomas Carlyle. That theory took a serious beating this year. Look at the year through a different lens and you'll see another story, one that isn't about conflict or great men. It's a story about community and collaboration on a scale never seen before. It's about the cosmic compendium of knowledge, Wikipedia, and the million-channel people's network, YouTube, and the online metropolis, MySpace. It's about the many wresting power from the few and helping one another for nothing, and how that will not only change the world, but also change the way the world changes. And what does that mean for volunteering? Well, it means, I think, that the traditional notion of a predetermined volunteering opportunity, where we would expect people to come in and be placed, is perhaps going to be something rather outdated in the future. Co-production, we think, means that people are going to want to shape their own opportunities, their own volunteering space in a way that they've never done before. And that provides challenges for organisations. There are some organisations, I think, already who have begun to grasp the nettle. Oxfam had recently launched their Oxjam events, whereby they're encouraging people to use the Oxfam name, but to set up their own musical events in their local backyard, in their local living room, in their local community centre. Again, part of this movement towards a co-production of resource, a co-production of volunteering opportunities. But this does also provide another challenge, and that is the challenge of risk and how we can cope with risk. Because as we give away control, going back to my subtext about giving away control, the notion that we're no longer able to manage and control risk becomes a more fundamental problem for organisations that are already bound up in this risk-averse society of ours at the moment. A worrying statistic from a survey that my organisation carried out a few years ago, that 1 million volunteers are considering giving up their volunteering because they're worried about being litigated against. And a quote from one of the organisations we spoke to really worried me. The quote was, it's often better to do nothing than to take a chance. And if that's a quote, if that's being replicated within volunteer organisations, where risk is an absolute essential of pushing boundaries and enabling the volunteers themselves to get the best out of their experience, then I think we're setting up something troublesome for the future. And this notion of giving away control to volunteers, enabling them to come in and help to shape the agenda, inevitably has risks associated with it that we need to be able to confront. There was a local Greenpeace that I came across branch a few weeks ago that had been struggling to recruit volunteers, and one of the ways in which they had a fantastic increase in volunteers was to open up opportunities for volunteers using the Greenpeace brand to write letters on their behalf, on Greenpeace's behalf. But the volunteer manager said to me, this is fantastic. We've doubled the numbers of volunteers, but we feel one removed from them. They're no longer office-based volunteers. They're people who are volunteering on behalf of Greenpeace, but we haven't got the same control, and there's risks attached to that. So by giving away control, by living more in this world that we're moving into, a world of co-production, I think we've also got to grasp the nettle of some of the issues to do with risk and risk management. Finally, if I may, I'd just like to finish with a quote from a favourite poet of mine, Robert Frost, who I think is probably one of the greatest American poets of the 20th century. And in his poem of 1936, entitled Two Tramps in Mudtime, he reflects on the meaning of work and the balance to be struck between working for a living, which in his poem the tramps are doing, and working for the love of it or the sheer pleasure of getting involved. And his conclusion, for me, sums up what volunteering is all about and why it has such a powerful place in our lives. Volunteering is not a replacement for paid work, and never should be. But for many people, volunteering provides a greater opportunity than paid work for realising their dreams and passions and for making a difference in the world. This coming together in Frost's terms of love and need, of work and play, or of what it calls vocation, a calling, and avocation, one's passion. And I don't think there's any better description of the power of volunteering than the bringing together of a calling and of a passion, vocation and avocation, is essential, Frost says, for human satisfaction. And his final stanza, he puts it like this: that yield who will to their separation. My object in living is to unite my avocation and my vocation, as my two eyes make one in sight. Only where love and need are one, and where the work is play for mortal stakes, is the deed ever really done for heaven and for the future's sakes.